Right now, somewhere in the world, there's a room filled with evidence that could solve humanity's greatest mysteries. But here's the terrifying truth. We already have all the clues we're ever going to get. The witnesses are dead, the crime scenes are cold, and the secrets they took to their graves will haunt us forever. What if I told you that over 5,000 people vanish without a trace every single day? That civilizations have simply disappeared, leaving behind only questions carved in stone. That some of history's most brilliant minds died under circumstances so bizarre, so impossible, that even today's technology can't explain what really happened. These aren't just unsolved cases. These are mysteries so profound, so deeply embedded in the fabric of human history, that they've become part of our collective nightmare. Secrets that time itself has sworn to keep. 20 puzzles that have stumped investigators, historians, and scientists for decades, centuries, even millennia. But I have to warn you, once you hear these stories, you'll never look at history the same way again. Because sometimes the most terrifying truth is that there might be no truth at all. Section 1. Vanished without a trace. Let's start with something that should be impossible in our modern world. On December 5, 1945, 5 Navy bombers took off from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, on what should have been a routine training mission. Flight 19, as it came to be known, was composed of experienced pilots who knew these waters like the back of their hands. But within hours, radio transmissions became erratic. The flight leader reported that both his compasses had malfunctioned. Then came the words that still send chills down investigators' spines. "We don't know which way is west. Everything is wrong. Even the ocean doesn't look as it should." 14 men vanished that day in the Bermuda Triangle. A rescue plane sent to find them also disappeared, taking 13 more souls with it. No wreckage was ever found. No bodies recovered. 27 people simply erased from existence in one of the most heavily traveled shipping lanes in the world. The official explanation blames equipment failure and bad weather. But here's what they don't tell you. Flight 19 wasn't the first to vanish in these waters. It wasn't even the 10th. The Bermuda Triangle has swallowed ships, planes, and people for over a century, and we're no closer to understanding why. Moving from the modern era to ancient times, let's talk about an entire civilization that vanished overnight. The Indus Valley Civilization, also known as the Harappan Civilization, was one of the world's earliest urban societies. At its peak, around 2600 BCE, it was home to over 5 million people spread across what is now Pakistan and northwest India. These weren't primitive settlements. The Harappans built sophisticated cities with advanced drainage systems, standardized weights and measures, and a written language that we still can't decipher today. They traded with civilizations as far away as Mesopotamia and created art and jewelry that rivals anything produced in the modern world. Then, around 1900 BCE, they simply stopped. No signs of war. No evidence of natural disaster, no mass graves or burned cities. The people of the Indus Valley just walked away from their incredible civilization and disappeared into history. Some theories suggest climate change forced them to abandon their cities. Others point to a shift in river patterns. But the truth is, we have no idea what happened to 5 million people. They left behind only empty cities and a written language that mocks our attempts to understand it. Section 2. Deaths that defy explanation. If disappearances are haunting, then mysterious deaths are absolutely terrifying. Because when someone dies under impossible circumstances, it forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that there are things in this world we simply don't understand. Take the Dyatlov Pass incident of 1959. 9 experienced hikers set out to conquer a remote mountain in the Soviet Ural Mountains. They were skilled outdoorsmen, well-equipped, and prepared for the harsh conditions. But something went horribly wrong on the night of February 1st. When rescue teams found their abandoned campsite, they discovered something that defied all logic. The tent had been cut open from the inside, as if the hikers had desperately tried to escape something terrifying. They had fled barefoot into the freezing wilderness, wearing only their underwear, in temperatures of -30 degrees Fahrenheit. The bodies, when finally recovered months later, told an even more disturbing story. Some showed signs of severe trauma, crushed ribs, fractured skulls, but no external injuries. Others had missing eyes and tongues. One woman's clothes showed traces of radioactivity. The Soviet authorities quickly classified the case and blamed it on an unknown compelling force. 65 years later, we're still debating what that force could have been. Avalanche? Military testing gone wrong? Something far more sinister? The mountain where they died is now called Dyatlov Pass, named after the expedition leader. But the locals call it by its original name, which translates to "don't go there." Even more baffling is the death of Elisa Lam in 2013. The 21-year-old Canadian student was found dead in a water tank on the roof of the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles, a location she couldn't have accessed alone, and one that was locked from the outside. The last footage of Elisa alive shows her in the hotel elevator, exhibiting bizarre behavior that's both heartbreaking and terrifying to watch. She presses multiple floor buttons, hides in the corner, and appears to be talking to someone who isn't there. The elevator doors won't close, as if the building itself is trying to trap her. How did she get to that water tank? Why was she acting so strangely in the elevator? The official cause of death was accidental drowning, but that explanation raises more questions than it answers. Hotel guests had been complaining about the taste and pressure of the water for days before her body was discovered. The very water they were drinking, showering with, and brushing their teeth with contained the decomposing remains of a young woman who shouldn't have been there. Section 3. The Ancient Enigmas. History is littered with monuments and artifacts that shouldn't exist. Structures so advanced, so precisely engineered, that they challenge everything we think we know about our ancestors' capabilities. Consider the Great Pyramid of Giza. Yes, you've heard of it before, but let me share some facts that will change how you see this ancient wonder forever. This isn't just a big pile of stones. It's a mathematical masterpiece that we couldn't replicate today without modern Mac. The pyramid contains over 2.3 million stone blocks, each weighing between 2.5 and 15 tons. They're fitted together so precisely that you can't slip a knife blade between them. The entire structure is aligned to true north with an accuracy of just 3/60th of a degree, more precise than the Greenwich Observatory in London. Here's where it gets really strange. The pyramid's dimensions encode the mathematical constant pi to several decimal places. The ratio of its height to its base perimeter equals pi divided by 2. The ancient Egyptians weren't supposed to know about pi. It wouldn't be officially discovered by Greek mathematicians for another 1,000 years. But the mathematical mysteries don't stop there. The speed of light, when measured in meters per second, matches the pyramid's coordinates in latitude to an extraordinary degree of precision. The pyramid's internal temperature remains constant at 68 degrees Fahrenheit, the same as the Earth's internal temperature. Coincidence? Or did our ancestors know something we've forgotten? Then there's Stonehenge, The ancient stone circle that has puzzled humanity for millennia. The massive stones, some weighing up to 50 tons, were somehow transported from Wales over 150 miles away and arranged with astronomical precision that rivals modern observatories. But here's what makes Stonehenge truly mysterious. Recent ground-penetrating radar has revealed that it's just the tip of the iceberg. Beneath and around the famous stone circle lies a vast underground complex of monuments, burial chambers, and structures that span an area larger than many modern cities. The question isn't just how they built Stonehenge, it's why. What was so important about this specific location that our ancestors spent over 1,500 years continuously building, rebuilding, and expanding this site? What were they trying to achieve, or perhaps communicate, that required such massive effort across so many generations? Section 4. Lost Civilizations and Forgotten Knowledge. Some mysteries aren't about what happened, but about what was lost. Throughout history, entire libraries of human knowledge have simply vanished, taking with them secrets that could have changed the course of civilization. The Library of Alexandria stands as perhaps the greatest intellectual tragedy in human history. For over 700 years, it served as the world's center of learning, housing over 700,000 scrolls containing the accumulated knowledge of the ancient world. Works by Archimedes, Euclid, and countless other brilliant minds filled its halls. But the library didn't just contain copies of existing works. It was a research institution where new discoveries were made daily. Ancient texts suggest that Alexandrian scholars had calculated the Earth's circumference, created steam-powered devices, and even theorized about atoms centuries before these concepts were rediscovered in the modern era. When the library was destroyed, whether by fire, religious zealotry, or simple neglect, remains debated. Humanity lost centuries of accumulated knowledge. How many cures for diseases were burned? How many technological innovations were lost? How many answers to questions we're still asking today went up in smoke? The loss becomes even more heartbreaking when you consider the Antikythera mechanism. Discovered in a shipwreck off the Greek coast, this 2,000-year-old device is essentially an ancient computer. It could predict eclipses, track planetary movements, and calculate the timing of the Olympic Games with stunning accuracy. The mechanism's complexity is equivalent to a Swiss clockwork from the 18th century, but it was built in the 1st century BCE. This single artifact proves that ancient civilizations possessed technological sophistication that we never imagined. If one such device survived by pure chance, how many others were lost? What other impossible technologies did our ancestors possess? Section 5. The Identity Mysteries. Some historical mysteries aren't about events or places. They're about people. Individuals whose true identities have become puzzles that have consumed investigators for generations. Jack the Ripper stalked the streets of London's Whitechapel district in 1888, killing at least 5 women in ways so brutal and precise that they suggest medical knowledge. But the Ripper's true identity remains one of history's most debated mysteries. Over the years, suspects have included everyone from a member of the royal family to a Jewish immigrant, from a prominent surgeon to a deranged midwife. Each theory seems plausible until you examine it closely. The evidence always seems to point in multiple directions at once, as if the Ripper was deliberately leaving false clues. What makes this case particularly haunting is that the Ripper wrote letters to the police and newspapers, taunting authorities and promising more murders. The letters demonstrate intelligence, education, and an intimate knowledge of the investigation's progress. This wasn't just a random killer. It was someone who understood how to manipulate both the media and law enforcement. The question that haunts us isn't just who Jack the Ripper was, but how someone could commit such visible, public crimes in one of the world's most heavily policed cities and then simply vanish. Did he die? Move away? Or did he continue killing somewhere else, under a different name? Then there's the case of D.B. Cooper, the only unsolved air piracy case in American history. On November 24, 1971, a man calling himself Dan Cooper boarded Northwest Orient Flight 305 from Portland to Seattle. He was described as a middle-aged businessman in a suit and tie, completely unremarkable. But Cooper had a bomb in his briefcase. He calmly showed it to flight attendant Florence Schaffner, handed her a note explaining his intentions, and politely demanded $200,000 in $20 bills and 4 parachutes. When the plane landed in Seattle, he released the 36 passengers but kept the crew. Then came the part that turned Cooper from criminal to legend. He ordered the plane to take off again, headed for Mexico City. But somewhere over southwestern Washington's dense forests, Cooper lowered the aft stairs and jumped into a freezing November night, wearing only a business suit. He was never seen again. Despite the largest investigation in FBI history, Cooper's true identity remains unknown. Was he an experienced paratrooper? A Boeing employee who knew the 727 systems? Or just an ordinary man who pulled off the perfect crime? The FBI closed the case in 2016, but Cooper's ghost still haunts American aviation. Section 6. Natural mysteries that defy science. Not all historical mysteries involve human actions. Some of the most perplexing puzzles come from nature itself. Phenomena so strange that they challenge our understanding of how the world works. In 1908, something exploded over the remote Tunguska region of Siberia with the force of 1,000 atomic bombs. The blast flattened 2,000 square kilometers of forest, creating a devastation pattern visible from space. Seismic stations around the world registered the impact. And the atmospheric disturbance was so severe that for days afterward, the night sky glowed bright enough to read by across Europe and somewhere. But here's the mystery. No crater was ever found. No meteorite fragments. No evidence of what could have caused such massive destruction. The most widely accepted theory suggests that a comet or asteroid exploded in the atmosphere before hitting the ground. But some of the evidence doesn't fit this explanation. Witnesses described seeing a pillar of light brighter than the sun, followed by a shock wave that threw people to the ground hundreds of miles away. Trees at the blast center remained standing, while those in a surrounding ring were flattened outward in a perfect pattern. This is consistent with an aerial explosion, but the energy required would have left more evidence than we found. Even more puzzling are the sailing stones of Death Valley. Yes, for decades, researchers documented massive boulders, some weighing hundreds of pounds, that moved across the flat desert floor, leaving perfectly straight trails behind them. The stones would sit motionless for years, then suddenly glide hundreds of yards in new directions, as if pushed by invisible hands. The mystery persisted until 2014, when researchers finally witnessed the phenomenon firsthand. During rare winter conditions, thin sheets of ice form on the valley floor. When the sun rises, the ice breaks into large floating panels that are pushed by light winds. These ice sheets, though only a few millimeters thick, are strong enough to push even massive boulders across the slippery surface. It's a perfectly logical explanation, except it required a century of investigation to figure out. This makes you wonder, how many other supernatural things, phenomena, are simply natural processes we don't understand yet? Section 7. The Manuscript Mysteries. Some mysteries come bound in pages, written in languages that shouldn't exist, or containing knowledge that seems impossible for their time. These manuscript mysteries represent some of humanity's most frustrating puzzles, answers written down in black and white, yet completely indecipherable. The Voynich manuscript might be the most mysterious book ever created. Written in the early 15th century, it contains 240 pages of text in an unknown language, accompanied by bizarre illustrations of unidentifiable plants, astronomical charts, and naked women in strange pools of liquid. For over 600 years, the world's best codebreakers and linguists have tried to decode this book. During World War II, the same team that broke the Enigma code took a crack at it. Computer scientists have run it through every decryption algorithm imaginable. Professional and amateur cryptographers have dedicated their lives to solving its secrets. The result? Nothing. Not a single word has been definitively translated. The text shows statistical properties of real language. It has word patterns, paragraph structures, and linguistic rhythms that suggest it's not just meaningless gibberish. But if it's a real language, it's unlike any other language ever documented. Some theories suggest it's an elaborate hoax, a meaningless collection of symbols designed to fool medieval scholars. Others believe it's written in a lost language or dialect. The most intriguing theory is that it's encoded using a method so sophisticated that it predates known cryptography by centuries. The botanical illustrations add another layer of mystery. The plants depicted in the manuscript don't match any known species, living or extinct. They're fantastical creations with bizarre root systems, impossible flower arrangements, and structures that violate basic botanical principles. Were they imaginary plants? Stylized representations of real species? Or perhaps plants from a world that never existed? Section 8. The Technological Anomalies. Throughout history, archaeologists have discovered artifacts that shouldn't exist according to our understanding of technological development. These out-of-place artifacts suggest that either our timeline of human advancement is wrong, or someone in the past had access to knowledge and technology we've lost. The Baghdad Battery, discovered in 1936, consists of a clay jar containing a copper cylinder and an iron rod. When filled with an acidic solution like vinegar or wine, it produces a small electrical charge. This seems impossible. Electricity wasn't supposed to be harnessed by humans until the 18th century. Yet this device dates to around 250 BCE. Skeptics argue that the artifact wasn't actually used as a battery, but the electrochemical reaction is undeniable. If ancient people did understand electricity, what did they use it for? There are no other electrical devices from this period, no infrastructure to support electrical technology. The Baghdad Battery stands alone, an isolated puzzle piece from a larger picture we may never see. Even more controversial is the Piri Reis map of 1513. This Ottoman admiral's chart shows the coastlines of South America and Antarctica with remarkable accuracy. But here's the problem. Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820, and its ice-free coastline hasn't been visible for millions of years. The map also shows South America's coast with precise longitude calculations, a feat that shouldn't have been possible without accurate maritime clocks, which weren't invented until the 18th century. Modern analysis has confirmed that the map's proportions and distances are mathematically correct to a degree that seems impossible for 1513. Admiral Piri Reis claimed he based his map on older charts, including some drawn by Christopher Columbus and others dating back to ancient times. But where did these source maps come from? Who had the technological capability to accurately chart the world's coastlines centuries before the age of exploration. Section 9. The disappearances that changed history. Some people don't just vanish, they take pieces of history with them. Their disappearances leave gaps in our understanding of crucial historical moments. Questions that will never be answered because the only witnesses are gone forever. Amelia Earhart's disappearance in 1937, during her attempt to circumnavigate the globe, has captivated the world for over 80 years. She and navigator Fred Noonan were last heard from on July 2nd, as they attempted to locate Howland Island in the Pacific Ocean. Their radio transmissions grew fainter and more desperate before cutting out entirely. Despite being the most expensive search in U.S. Coast Guard history, no conclusive trace of Earhart, Noonan, or their Lockheed Electra has ever been found. The ocean around Howland Island is over 14,000 feet deep, which could explain why the wreckage hasn't been recovered. But Earhart's fate has spawned countless theories and expeditions. Some believe she crashed on Gardner Island and died as a castaway. Others suggest she was captured by the Japanese and died in prison. The most intriguing theory is that she survived, assumed a new identity, and lived quietly in the United States until her natural death decades later. What makes Earhart's disappearance particularly haunting is that she represented so much more than just an aviator. She was a symbol of women's capabilities in an era when such symbols were desperately needed. Her loss wasn't just personal, it was cultural, removing a powerful voice for equality at a critical moment in history. The disappearance of Roald Amundsen, the first person to reach the South Pole, is equally tragic. In 1928, the legendary explorer vanished while flying a rescue mission to save fellow explorer Umberto Nobili, whose airship had crashed in the Arctic. Amundsen's plane disappeared somewhere over the Barents Sea, and despite extensive searches, only a single float from his aircraft was ever recovered. The irony is heartbreaking. Amundsen, who had conquered both poles and navigated the Northwest Passage, vanished while trying to save someone else. The man who seemed capable of surviving anywhere on Earth simply disappeared into the same Arctic wilderness he had mastered so completely. Section 10. The Modern Mysteries. You might think that with our modern surveillance systems, satellite tracking, and digital forensics, new unsolvable mysteries would be impossible. You'd be wrong. Some of today's most baffling cases prove that mystery and technology can coexist, sometimes creating puzzles even more complex than anything from the past. Malaysian Airlines Flight 370's disappearance in 2014 shouldn't have been possible in our hyper-connected world. The Boeing 777 was equipped with multiple tracking systems, satellite communications, and transponders that should have made it impossible to lose. Yet somewhere over the South China Sea, MH370 simply vanished from radar screens with 239 people aboard. The last transmission from the cockpit was routine. "Good night, Malaysian 370. Minutes later, the plane's transponder went silent, and the aircraft deviated from its planned route to Beijing. Satellite data suggests the plane continued flying for over 6 hours, eventually crashing somewhere in the southern Indian Ocean. But despite the most expensive search in aviation history, covering an area larger than Pennsylvania, only scattered debris pieces have been recovered. The questions surrounding MH370 are deeply disturbing. Why did the plane change course? Who disabled the communication systems? Was it pilot suicide, hijacking, or mechanical failure? The fact that a modern airliner can disappear so completely in 2014 is a reminder that our technological mastery has limits we're only beginning to understand. Section 11. The Patterns in the Chaos. As we near the end of our journey through history's greatest mysteries, a disturbing pattern emerges. These aren't random, isolated incidents. They represent something fundamental about the human experience, our eternal struggle against the unknown, our desperate need to understand the world that often refuses to reveal its secrets. Many of these mysteries share common elements that make them even more unsettling. They often involve the sudden disappearance of people who should have been found. They feature evidence that points in multiple directions simultaneously. They have official explanations that satisfy no one and alternative theories that satisfy everyone too much. Most disturbing of all, they remind us that human knowledge has limits. We like to believe that science, technology, and investigation can eventually solve any puzzle. But these 20 mysteries stand as monuments to the possibility that some questions simply have no answers, or at least no answers we're capable of understanding. Consider how many of these cases involve groups of people who vanished together. Flight 19, the Dyatlov Pass hikers. The Indus Valley Civilization. There's something particularly horrifying about mass disappearances because they can't be explained by individual choices or personal tragedies. When entire groups vanish, it suggests forces beyond human control or understanding. The technological mysteries are equally troubling because they challenge our assumptions about linear progress. We assume that human knowledge and capability have steadily increased over time. But artifacts like the Antikythera mechanism and structures like the Great Pyramid suggest that our ancestors possessed knowledge that we've lost and capabilities we can't replicate. We've journeyed through 20 mysteries that span millennia, continents, and every aspect of human experience. From ancient civilizations that vanished overnight to modern planes that disappeared into thin air. From impossible artifacts to indecipherable manuscripts. From natural phenomena that defy physics to deaths that make no sense. What connects all these mysteries isn't their subject matter, it's their refusal to be solved. They represent the universe's eternal no to humanity's eternal why. They remind us that for all our scientific advances, all our technological marvels, all our accumulated wisdom, there are still secrets that time itself has decided to keep. But perhaps that's not entirely a bad thing. In a world where information is instant and privacy is extinct, where satellites can read license plates from space and DNA can solve crimes decades old, mystery has become a rare and precious commodity. These unsolved puzzles preserve something essential about the human experience: our sense of wonder, our acceptance of limits, our comfort with uncertainty. They also serve as bridges between past and present, connecting us to every generation of humans who stared at the same evidence, asked the same questions, and walked away with the same empty hands. The scholars who puzzled over the Voynich manuscript in 1500 felt the same frustration we feel today. The investigators who searched for Flight 19 in 1945 experienced the same helplessness that MH370's families feel now. In that shared bewilderment, these mysteries become something more than unsolved cases. They become part of our collective human story. Reminders that we're all temporary visitors in a universe far stranger and more complex than we'll ever fully comprehend. So the next time you encounter something that doesn't make sense, something that defies explanation or challenges everything you thought you knew, remember these 20 mysteries. Remember that the most important questions are often the ones without answers, and that some secrets are meant to remain secret. Because in a world where everything seems explainable, these enduring mysteries remind us of the most important truth of all. There's still magic in the unknown, still wonder in the unexplained, and still room for mystery in a universe that refuses to give up all its secrets. The dead keep their silence, the vanished stay vanished, and somewhere out there, 20 puzzles wait patiently for the next generation of investigators who believe they can solve what no one else could. They're waiting for you. But I wonder, are you brave enough to join the ranks of those who've tried and failed? Or will you become just another person who stared into the abyss of the unknown and realized that sometimes the abyss stares back? The choice is yours. The mysteries remain. If you enjoyed diving into these unsolvable puzzles, there are countless more waiting to be explored. The world is full of secrets, and every one of them has a story to tell, even if that story ends with a question mark.